We only put them in the library if they hit these points. And like I said, it favors, there's something we can do with hand-coded assembly that'll make it run faster. And it's mostly about, not that compilers aren't great, but there's just some things they'll never do. So the functions are in a couple categories. Data protection, data integrity, we have RAID and erasure code functions, and a number of different CRCs, everything from 16-bit to 64-bit CRCs, and a number of different polynomials. We have cryptographic hashing, which is the multi-buffer variety. I'll describe that more later. We have encryption, but not in a complete crypto library. We've done just what storage really cares about, is the block ciphers. So we have fast block ciphers, and that's it. We try to keep it simple and not try to redo a whole other crypto library. And lastly, we have a special compression that we put in because it's well suited for storage applications. So I'll go into more of these in detail, but I wasn't going to talk too much about the CRCs and the crypto, just because I didn't want to, I guess. But you should know that we can do CRCs as one of these ones that's with hand-coded optimization. You can run very fast. I think we run. The latest is 0.18 cycles per byte. So small fractional cycles per byte. And we can do the CRC64 as fast as we can do many of the other 32-bit polynomials. And in crypto, again, we've optimized them down to many of them are single cycles per byte or fractional cycles per byte. So where is it used? There's actually a whole lot of integrations. Since we've gone open source, there's a lot of open source integrations, including HDFS has been integrated, Ceph, Swift, and many other open source projects. I hear about new ones, every week, really. Streaming encryption ones, Netflix has a paper where they talked about and using ISA-L functions. And so if you're using Netflix, you're already using ISA-L, I guess. Other dedupe and file systems, distributed file systems, enterprise file systems, and a whole lot of other proprietary projects. And because we're under a flexible BSD license, you can do open source projects or integrate into your proprietary projects. So next, compression. So what we have is a special fast deflate in the library. It's deflate RFC 1951. It's an old standard. It's been around forever. It's built into lots of different other standards, PNG, web standards. There's a whole lot. It's everywhere. It's a lossless compression algorithm, and zlib is the famous library that uses it. So we're compatible with zlib streams, but we want to work on the go fast side, the -1. Because this is an application of storage. Storage either seems to want the go as fast as you can in a reasonable compression ratio, or the compress as hard as you can. And so they're used at different times. Usually the offline compression, they don't care so much about how long it takes. Just make it as small as possible, and every bit of compression ratio counts. And then, but when you're doing streaming, trying to do it inline or on the fly, then speed counts, and you need to keep up with the data. You have to run fast as possible, and it's just get as good a reasonable compression ratio. And so that's what we did with with our fast deflate. I should say the history. If you haven't tried it recently, we've made some recent improvements. We put a lot of time into this compression recently. Last year we had something we thought was great. It was about 12 cycles per byte, and it was a static Huffman compress, and it had pretty good deployment. And we thought that was as fast as we could go, really. And then we took another look at it, and we found we could make even more improvement. And so now it's down to, I think, 6.8 cycles per byte. And that's the static Huffman. And then we added a fully dynamic a Huffman that's comparable in compression ratio to zlib-1. And I think that's at 7.2 cycles per byte. So it's not too much slower. And with this, put us in another category, really. We're as fast or about as fast as other protocols that are built for speed. Snappy and LZ4 were made to go fast, and there's some limit on compression ratio. And in many cases, we're in line with faster than Snappy. And this is Calgary Corpa, but even on other Corpa, we're in line with the speeds of LZ4. But we have the compression ratio of other standards, even standards that were built after zlib that have become popular now. Brotli is by Google more recently, and Z-Standard by Facebook. And we're in line with their compression ratios, but much faster. So we're now up to about 5 times faster than zlib-1, and we're sort of the only one in this category, this upper right corner, which is go fast and have reasonable compression ratio. And we also have a decompress. It's about 2.5 times faster than zlib. So, and then what else we have that's unique is cryptographic hashing. And this is used in a lot of storage systems, of course, for either for data integrity or for dedupe. And it's something that is a traditionally high cycle per byte operation. And so if you're streaming gigabytes per second through your storage system and you're hashing every block for dedupe, you can quickly consume your machine with doing nothing but hashing. And so for that case, customers were looking for better throughput. And so the multi-buffer hashing is basically vectorized cryptographic hashes. So how it works is you have to have a bunch of independent hash jobs, and like you do in a storage system. And then you can put them together and then run them together in a vectorized instruction. And so MD5, SHA-1, SHA-256, SHA-512, we do various. And then the only downside is you have this something of an asynchronous interface. You have to submit to fill the lanes, and the lanes could be 4 to 32, depending on your hash and your architecture. But once you fill it, there's a little bit of animation. You run them together in parallel. And then when they're done, you get all 4 to 32 hashes out at the same time. And so by doing this, it's inconvenient a bit for going from a synchronous interface to this asynchronous interface and having, queuing up these hash jobs. I'm not going to say it's easy, but if you can, the throughput is much higher. It can be 5 to 8 times the throughput of the single buffer hashes. And so for that reason, it's worth it for customers to implement the multi-buffer hash. But in addition, we have something else called multi-cache. And what this is tries to get the best of both worlds of this synchronous interface and the throughput of multi-buffer hashing. And what it does, it takes advantage of storage customers when they do cryptographic hashes, especially for dedupe. They don't care so much about all the properties of the cryptographic hash, mostly about collision probabilities. And so for that reason, they don't really care what the hash is, just that it has similar collision probabilities. So what we've done is we've taken the multi-buffer hashing basically, and we run it all together on one buffer. So you have 16 independent interleaved pieces of your block. We run them all together at the throughputs of multi-buffer hash, and then at the end you have a number of hashes and we hash them all together. So you get one digest basically that's similar characteristics of your cryptographic hash, but now it's synchronous and has a throughput of multi-buffer hashing. When what you get out is not exactly a SHA-1 or a SHA-256, of course, but like I said, storage customers, it's worth it when they can't do the asynchronous interface of the multi-buffer hashes. So it also, the multi-buffer hashing pairs pretty well with dedupe. And so as an example, you're streaming a bunch of data through your system. You have something that cuts it up into blocks typically. This could be a variable length chunker or a constant block chunker. And then as you get the chunks, decide the chunk boundaries, you pass them, you submit them to the multi-buffer hash. And so when you've queued up enough, filled the lanes, then it all runs together and you get all the hashes in at the same time. And then this can be your decision for your dedupe process, whether to keep the chunks. And so another good feature of this multi-buffer hash is we have a built-in scheduler. So this way, if you submit hashes, jobs with a variable length, they get fit together like a Tetris problem. So it keeps all the lanes full all the time. And so because it's vectorized, gen-to-gen hardware sees big benefits from this. So going from processors SSE to AVX, you can see quite a big jump in performance. And you can imagine when you're going to AVX 512, you'll see another jump. So finally, we have erasure codes too. So erasure codes are becoming pervasive in storage systems, and it seems everyone's implementing them. All the clouds and distributed storage ones are either have some or planning them. Hadoop, HDFS, Swift, Ceph, and other hyperscalers are also implementing them. And the reason why it's just the economics are irresistible. And it pairs well also with other storage systems that are doing replication by real replication. Other storage systems that have multiple copies of the data at the same time just make a policy of keep around at least 3, for instance, copies of the data so that they keep the replication. So this works great when it's hot, but in a tiered storage, when it gets warm or even cold, you don't want to keep around 3 copies of the data. That's not the best way to utilize your storage. So erasure codes allows you to trade off your redundancy limits and just fractional increases in the storage footprint. So why weren't they using them before? Previously, it was thought to be expensive. The traditional way to do erasure codes is Reed-Solomon, and doing the general purpose Galois multiply was not native, and they were very slow. But we found a way to vectorize them, and they're now very fast. And so there's really no reason not to use them now. And just at one point, we can do block erasure codes like a 10.4 in fractional cycles per byte. I think it's 0.4 on a modern processor. And that corresponds to gigabytes per second, multiple gigabytes per second. So, and also, as we implemented the erasure codes, we picked, we can do any general Reed-Solomon erasure code. That means you can pick any matrix, encoding matrix you want. And the performance doesn't depend on the coefficients of the matrix you pick. So that keeps them very flexible, and you can do just about any, and there's millions of ways you can do Reed-Solomon erasure codes. You can match you know, the parity and the sources, and Reed-Solomon erasure codes are optimal in the sense that they're maximum distance separable, and you can, there's a very easy way, if you pick the right encoding matrix, to tell how many erasures you can support before you can't recover the data. And because they're fast, they really make other erasure code methods irrelevant. There's lots of different other erasure code systems out there. A lot of them were designed when it was slow to do general purpose multiplies, and so they replaced multiplies with a whole lot of XORs or other operations. And that's inherently just limiting your coefficient matrix to only special coefficient matrix. And then there's other ones. I know this system is based on fountain codes, and Mojet transform uses one, but they all have different downsides. They're not MDS, and they're usually not as fast. So I really can't think of any reason why you wouldn't. If you have fast Reed-Solomon erasure codes, you wouldn't. If you're designing a new system, you wouldn't use Reed-Solomon. So as I said, it's open source project. It's available. It's split into two repos: the non-crypto part and the crypto part. And it's in a number of standard distros. It's in FreeBSD ports. It's in Clear Linux, Debian, Ubuntu. If you do apt-get libicel 2, I think, or libicel devel, you get the library package. And that's all I have. I have some performance matrix. I wasn't going to bore you with them, but quickly you can see the list. And it's really, we can do most operations now at single-digit cycles per byte or fractional cycles per byte. The multi-buffer hashes are down to just a couple cycles per byte. And like I said, these are 5 to 8 times faster than the single buffer versions. We can do block ciphers at 1 cycle per byte or less. And then RAID are so fast that they're almost immeasurable. And CRC, we can do 64, like I said, 64 as fast as we can do other polynomials. And in erasure codes are gigabytes per second, fractional cycles per byte. So that's it.
Great.
Yeah.
Question, please step up here.
So how does this library interface with some of the hardware accelerated features on Intel processors for like compression and cryptography?
That's a good question. So Intel does have other hardware assist, but this is completely separate.
Just totally
This is completely separate. This is the software-only library that we want, that will run on standard servers. There's other ways to get the hardware offload, but yeah, and they're very fast. But we found that when they go in the hardware offload, the algorithms go, there's even more demand for the software. So people still want the optimized software versions.